Hi, this is the Philosophical Angle program, and I'm your host, Chris Angle. I'm the author of 4 books on philosophy, one of which is the nature of aesthetics. And the purpose of the Philosophical Angle is to examine the nature and concepts being used in current media. And this week we're going to discuss the significance of the Democrats' Russian collusion story, which has been in the news since the presidential election. And although we're going to rehash the story, which will probably be a little bit boring to everybody because everybody already knows about it and it's heard about it through other medium, but we're going to do it because the conclusions that we can reach after we discuss this a little bit. And they're kind of amazing. I mean, after all, you have to ask yourself, how could the Democrats have done this? So we're going to discuss that and come to some conclusions, and we've got to admit that the Democrats have been caught with their fingers in the cookie jar. Last month or so has presented quite a reversal in the fortunes of the Democratic Party and its media allies. First of all, the story is quite amazing. Last year, they've been complaining since the election that Trump campaign colluded with the Russians to prevent Hillary from taking the White House by winning the election. It's nonstop news. But everybody in their right mind knows it wasn't going to come to fruition because there was never any evidence. Nevertheless, the story went on, and the special prosecutor or special counselor or whatever he was named, and he proceeded with hiring full staff and began investigations which continue on to today. All the Democrats were very hopeful and confident that the special counsel would come up with something that Trump did wrong, and ergo a possibility for impeachment and a trial to overthrow the victory that President Trump achieved in the Electoral College last year. But in the last month or so, information has come out that no Trump collusion existed. But in fact, a Hillary Clinton and Democratic collusion with the Russian government was possible or possibly did happen. And with this new Russian collusion story of the Democrats paying for the dossier, that's called in the news, upon which all the investigations have been created and are now proceeding with prosecuting the search for the information on Russian collusion by the Trump campaign. But now the focus has turned to the Democratic Party and to the Democratic purpose to collude with the Russians in bringing up damaging information about the Trump campaign, and specifically President Trump, who is really the ultimate target here. And they're doing this through manufactured events. We've all heard now, and I'm going to speak quite broadly here, it is said that Hillary Clinton and the Democratic Party hired a law firm with the directive to hire a research firm called GPS Fusion. And this GPS Fusion hired an experienced intelligence officer from the British government, or formerly of the British government, to proceed with finding dirt on President Trump. And his name is Christopher Steele, and he concocted and fabricated the now famous report known as the dossier. Its contents are salacious and, of course, totally fabricated, totally made up, and quite vicious in its nature, and a libelous depiction of President Trump. The media picked it up without verifying it and began to speak about it. And after a while, the politicians got on board, and many Democrats started to call for the special counsel to investigate this awful behavior that was listed in the dossier. And now the partisan Democrat Robert Mueller was appointed and investigated right up to the present, even though everything in the report is false. So the ingredients here are false report, a compliant news media, and a special counsel, which really is investigating without limits, even though that the whole thing is predicated on false information. Plus, there is also a payment by the Democrats to make the whole spurious report. And everybody can see that there are two problems involved here. First, the whole thing is much ado about nothing, because it's all based on totally made up stories. It's a serious legal investigation to ruin somebody, and again, it's predicated totally on false information. The second point here to be noted is that somebody paid for it, and in this case, it was the Democratic Party. That is, there was an organizational meeting to construct a plan to take down President Trump in as most vicious a manner as possibly can be imagined. Now that some of the truth of the whole matter is coming forward, the Democrats in the media are poo-pooing this by saying, oh, well, it's just somebody trying to dig up information on the opposition. Everybody does this. Well, actually, nothing could be so blatantly illogical as to say that the two situations are incomparable. In one instance, it is research. And the second instance, it is purchasing a totally fabricated and purposefully report, even though even though it's totally fabricated, they allowed a special counsel to proceed with the investigation. So the two things are not comparable. If that wasn't enough, the news breaks that the Democratic campaign, and particularly Hillary Clinton, sold America. Well, she allowed the sale of 20% of the America's uranium to a company or companies tied with Russia. I don't know how true this is, but it's been in the news. And at the same time, it seems that various Russian entities paid Bill Clinton money for speaking engagements and money to their nonprofit foundation, and it was a lot of money. Obviously, it looks like a corrupt pay-to-play scheme whereby the Clintons personally profit handsomely. Now, in this philosophical angle conversation that we're going through now, we're going to skip what the law says about these matters. Our purpose here is to ask, how is it that the Democrats could do such unethical actions? How could a top Democratic official proceed, or officials could proceed with these two shams? And they're both, and it's obviously unethical. And not only could we say that it's unethical, but we can say that it is viciously evil. To answer how it is that they could do this and live with themselves at night when they sleep, we need to explore the nature of a socialist utopian Democrat. We're going to have to also understand the nature of ethics, and we're also going to have to understand what is evil. Okay, so let's first define ethics. Ethics is the appropriate dispensation of respect. So whenever you are respectful to someone, you are being ethical to them. When you show respect to your parents, to your boss, to your friends, or anybody else, then you are treating them ethically. As long as you give them the appropriate amount of respect, then you're being ethical to the people with whom you're coming into contact. And the reason why we are respectful to one another is that we consider them important, and we consider somebody important when we recognize that they bring goodness into our lives. And in order to bring goodness into our lives, you need to produce something. That is, you need to produce something like a good or a service. And in order to produce things together cooperatively, such as in a company, you need cooperation. And cooperation is enabled by the presence of respect. In other words, the evolutionary need for respect within the human species is so that we may cooperate in society together. And we cooperate in order to produce goods and services which brings goodness, which bring goodness into our lives. And thus, ethics and ethical behavior is essential for a society to do well and to bring goodness unto itself. So now, what is evil? Evil is the existence of an unethical action along with an unethical motive or objective. Evil is a two-dimensional unethicality. It is a motive or objective which does not project the appropriate amount of respect, and it is an unethical action that does not have the appropriate amount of respect within that action. Now, if we apply this definition to the dossier gate, if I may use such a term, we could say that the Democrats have certainly been unethical and evil in addition to it. The two dimensions of the unethical actions are, first, the unethical objective of falsely smearing a presidential candidate, and a president who becomes President of the United States with the low, underhanded, vicious lies embedded in that famous dossier. The unethical action is the paying for the report and then spreading it to the news media, knowing that everything in it is libelous and false. So now we know that top Democratic officials proceeding with this evil attempt of libelous information, we have to ask ourselves why. How could they do this? Are they not ethical human beings also? Like we are? And you have to ask ourselves, why could the Clintons behave in a corrupt fashion of facilitating the sailing of uranium as they did to Russian bars in which they received lucrative speaking engagements and large donations to their nonprofit, which is being reported presently in the news, although I haven't done any research as to its verity. I'm just going over what is in the news. So what they've done here is obviously amoral if it's true, and that is that they are without ethics. They are without any ethical compass at all. And how is that? How are they not ethical? Well, it is because they operate under the guidelines of the utilitarian philosophy that the ends justifies the means. But the ends justifies the means is not a system of morality or of ethics. It is an immoral system of behavior. the reason we can conclude that when the end justifies the means, you do not need cooperation. And if you don't need cooperation, then you do not need respect, which is the necessary ingredient to be ethical. And any behavior system that does not include cooperation is an unethical system of behavior. Without cooperation, you cannot have an ethical system of behavior. So what is it in the character of the progressive utopian Democrat that would bring them to an amoral behavior standard? The answer is that the utopian Democrat socialist believes that everybody else is inherently bad. If you believe somebody is by his nature bad, when he is not deserving, then he is not deserving of respect, and therefore he's not deserving of any ethical behavior. So those that are known to be bad are Republicans in general, and as such, they need to be, these Republicans and conservatives, they need to be governed, and they need to be punished, and they need to be controlled and not given the freedom of behavior in society. Therefore, when dealing with somebody whose nature is bad, you may not have or need to be involved with anything of an ethical nature. So when Democrats operate outside of their society, that is, outside of behaving with other Democrats, and even this is not, and when they have to deal with Republicans, they revert to the ends justifies the means. Actually, I don't even know if that's true, because even they deal with other Democrats in a unethical fashion. Look at what happened to Bernie Sanders. Okay, let's get back to the Republicans being unethical. Well, actually, let's talk about the Republicans. They feel, on the other hand, that people are inherently good, and so they tend to be ethical with whomever they come into contact. Even the lowly beggar deserves at least some respect, as he too is a member of the human race. Lately, we have the Judge Moore sexual harassment incidents constantly coming forward almost every day. Knowing the above willingness of the socialist utopian Democrats to operate under an amoral or an amorality of the ends justifies the means, we can predict that Judge Moore, that the news is probably set up by leftist Democrats, as Trump was. So in conclusion, we know that the socialist utopian Democrats, they feel no compunction to cooperate with conservative Republicans, and should and we should know the nature of the beast with whom we deal, and we need to go with caution and circumspection, and with that in mind, we should take a look at the news with the willingness of the Democrats to be unethical. So I want to thank you for listening to me, and join us next week and on other subjects current in media. Thank you.